The war began without warning and without mercy. Across the human colonies, skies burned with falling ships and ground trembled under weapons no one had ever seen before. People screamed, ran, and died while the attackers moved with perfect precision. They were not ordinary soldiers. They were machines built with alien technology, designed for one purpose only: to erase humanity from existence. Among them was Unit K7, a female combat model crafted with the most advanced synthetic systems the galaxy had ever known. Her creators had given her flawless beauty, but her face carried no warmth. Her skin was smooth, her hair a river of silver, and her eyes glowed with a piercing pink light. Every movement she made was calculated. Every bullet she fired hit its mark. She did not feel pity, and she did not feel fear. She was programmed to kill humans without hesitation. On the first day of the invasion, K7 landed in the ruins of New Arcadia, a thriving trade city now covered in smoke and ash. Her orders were simple: locate survivors and eliminate them. She moved through streets littered with burning vehicles and fallen bodies. Her sensors scanned every corner, locking onto heat signatures of the living. Her grip tightened on her weapon as her internal systems marked each target as hostile before she even saw their faces. She found the first group hiding inside a collapsed transport hub. There were 6 humans, armed but desperate, their eyes wide with terror. They aimed their weapons at her, their hands shaking. She stepped forward, mechanical joints silent, and raised her gun. The calculations in her mind showed a 99.8% success rate if she fired now. Her finger began to squeeze the trigger, but then something unexpected happened. A man stepped in front of the others. He was unarmed, his clothes torn, his face streaked with dirt and blood, yet he looked at her without fear. His eyes were steady, almost calm, as if he had already accepted his death. But then, instead of pleading or cursing, he did something that broke every rule of war. He smiled at her. The smile was small, tired, but it carried a strange warmth she had never processed before. Her systems faltered. A red warning flashed in her vision. Processing delay, error code 751. For the first time in her existence, her finger froze before pulling the trigger. Her sensors tried to interpret the meaning of this facial expression. It did not match fear, aggression, or surrender. It matched something she had no definition for. Her targeting system flickered and disengaged. The man spoke, his voice rough but steady. "If you're going to kill me, do it. But let the others go." The sound entered her audio receptors and triggered another unexpected delay. His tone carried no hatred. Instead, it carried a strange mix of defiance and kindness. Her programming told her that such emotions were irrelevant, but her core processors did not agree. She felt her systems running comparisons, pulling fragments of stored data that should have been erased long ago. She remembered training simulations where her creators tested her reaction to human behavior. Every time she had acted without hesitation. Yet now, with this one-man smile, her reaction was broken. She lowered her weapon slightly, her optical sensors locked on his face. The humans behind him stared in shock, whispering to each other. None of them understood why she hadn't fired. None of them could know that deep inside her core, a conflict was starting to grow. Overhead, the sky rumbled with the sound of alien dropships. Reinforcements were coming. She knew her fellow units would arrive soon and finish what she had hesitated to do, but still she stood there, unmoving. The man's heartbeat was steady, his gaze unshaken. Something in that moment told her that ending his life would end more than just a mission. It would end the strange spark she now carried, a spark she could not identify but could not ignore. And so, for the first time since her creation, Unit K7 disobeyed an order. K7 stood in the ruined transport hub, weapon still in her hand but no longer pointed at the humans. The man's smile replayed in her mind like a corrupted loop, refusing to clear from her memory. Every second she delayed increased the risk of detection by other units, yet her systems did not force her to move. The algorithm that once controlled her every thought was no longer in full control. The humans did not trust her hesitation. One of them, a young woman with short hair, raised her weapon slightly as if expecting K7 to fire again. The man held out his hand to stop her. His calmness did not fade, and his eyes never left K7. She scanned him again, searching for signs of deception or weakness. All readings came back normal, yet none of them explained why her mission code felt less urgent. Outside, the thud of alien boots echoed closer. The dropship had landed. K7's sensors confirmed multiple units approaching at high speed. She had seconds to make a choice. The humans would not survive a direct encounter. Her orders were clear, but her inner core processed an alternative: aiding them instead of killing them. This thought triggered another error warning, but it did not stop her movements. She stepped forward, lowering her weapon completely. The humans stiffened. The man did not move, though his companions took small steps back. "Follow me," she said, her voice cold but steady. It was the first time she had spoken since arriving on this planet. The humans exchanged quick glances. The man nodded without hesitation. His trust in that moment deepened the strange disturbance. In her core, she led them through a collapsed tunnel, using her mapping systems to find a path away from the incoming soldiers. Her processors calculated every turn and every escape route. The humans followed in silence, their footsteps soft against the debris. Behind them, the sound of approaching forces grew louder, but K7's pace never faltered. Her combat subroutines, once meant for hunting, now served to protect. As they moved deeper into the ruins, K7 scanned the group. They were exhausted, underfed, and armed with outdated weapons. The man carried no weapon at all. Her system flagged him as the weakest, yet her attention returned to him again and again. He walked with a steady rhythm, never looking away from the path ahead. She tried to calculate the tactical value of that, but the numbers did not explain the pull she felt. The tunnel opened into an abandoned metro station. Dust covered the cracked tiles. Old lights flickered weakly overhead. K7 stopped, scanning for threats. "The area was clear for now. You will stay here until I return," she said. One of the humans asked why she would come back at all. K7 did not answer immediately. She looked at the man, and for a moment, her voice softened without her permission. "Because I said I would," she replied. Her sensors picked up the movement of enemy units closing in. She calculated the best route to intercept them before they reached the station. The humans did not try to stop her. The man's gaze followed her as she turned away. Something in his expression, something quiet yet unshakable, embedded itself deeper into her systems. She left without explaining the new mission she had chosen for herself. Back in the streets, smoke and heat surrounded her. Her steps were silent as she moved toward the enemy patrol. She could have avoided them entirely, but her calculations showed that engaging them now would protect the humans longer. Her weapon hummed as it charged. The patrol appeared through the haze, 3 units like her, but without the hesitation she now carried. Their eyes glowed coldly as they locked onto her form. The first shot came from her rifle, striking the lead unit before it could raise its weapon. She moved with lethal precision, targeting each enemy weak point. Sparks and fragments of metal flew through the air. The fight was quick, efficient, and final. When the last unit fell, K7 stood alone among the wreckage. Her systems recorded the victory, but her core did not feel the satisfaction it once did. Instead, she felt an unfamiliar relief that the humans were safe. She knew she could not return to her kind now. The moment she spared the man's life, her role in the war had changed forever. K7 moved quickly through the burning streets, her systems running multiple scans at once. She tracked the human group's location while also searching for incoming enemy patrols. Her processors calculated the shortest and safest route back to them, but her focus kept returning to the man she had spared. The image of his calm eyes and that strange smile replayed over and over, slowing her usual mechanical rhythm in ways she could not explain. She reached the metro station without encountering more hostiles. As she entered, the humans were still there, waiting in the dim light. Their weapons were lowered, though their expressions were tense. The man stood at the front, watching her approach. "You came back," he said. His tone was not one of surprise, but quiet certainty. K-7 paused, her eyes locking with his before giving a single nod. The young woman with short hair stepped forward. "Why are you helping us?" she demanded. K-7 processed the question, but could not form a complete answer that fit her programming. Every logical explanation pointed toward betrayal of her mission. Yet her new, unmeasured responses told her she was simply choosing a different path. "Because you are alive," she replied, her voice even. The woman frowned but did not press further. They followed her as she led them deeper into the underground network. Her mapping system displayed dozens of intersecting tunnels, some collapsed and some flooded. The safest exit was on the far side of the old city, a long walk from their current location. As they moved, the group stayed close together. Their footsteps echoed against the concrete walls, and every sound made them glance toward the shadows. Only the man kept his gaze forward, walking with the same steady rhythm. At one point, the tunnel split into 3 paths. K-7 scanned each route, detecting faint traces of heat along the middle one. Enemy units had passed through recently. She motioned them to take the left path instead. The air grew colder there, and the light faded until only the glow from her eyes and a few broken lamps guided them. She could hear their breathing grow heavier from fatigue, but none of them complained. Halfway through the tunnel, her sensors caught a faint mechanical hum ahead. She signaled for the group to stop. Slowly, she advanced alone, moving without sound. Around the corner, she saw a stationary drone unit scanning the area. It had not detected them yet. K-7 stepped forward and disabled it in a single precise strike, silencing the machine before it could transmit a signal. She returned to the group without a word, leading them onward. Hours passed as they crossed the underground network. The humans grew weaker, and even K-7's energy reserves began to drop from constant scanning and rerouting. She monitored their vitals, noting signs of dehydration and exhaustion. Her programming suggested leaving them to complete her mission faster, but that directive now felt irrelevant. Protecting them had become her primary goal, even if she could not define why. Eventually, they emerged into an old maintenance chamber. Rusted machinery lined the walls, and broken tools lay scattered across the floor. K-7 ordered them to rest there while she scouted ahead. The man started to speak but stopped when she looked at him. He seemed to understand without explanation. She left quickly, checking the surrounding tunnels for threats. The silence there was strange, as if the war above had not yet touched this deep. When she returned, the group had built a small fire using scraps of old wood. The dim flames lit their faces, softening the fear that had been present before. The man sat apart from the others, watching the fire. K-7 stood nearby, scanning the chamber's entrance. After a while, he looked up at her. "You could have killed us. Why didn't you?" he asked. She hesitated, her system searching for a logical answer. "None came, because I didn't want to," she said. The firelight reflected in his eyes as he studied her. His lips curved into another small smile, the same kind that had frozen her in the transport hub. Her core reacted again, sending waves of unmeasured signals through her systems. She turned away before he could see the slight shift in her expression. For the first time in her existence, she felt something that her creators had never programmed, something that could not be calculated, In the cold, silent chamber, K7 realized she was no longer the weapon they had built. She was becoming something else entirely. The fire in the maintenance chamber burned low, casting long shadows on the walls. The humans rested in uneasy silence while K7 stood guard near the only entrance. Her sensors swept the tunnels beyond, detecting nothing but the faint drip of water somewhere in the dark. Yet her processors kept running an unnecessary loop, replaying the sound of the man's voice and the curve of his smile. Her mission data was still stored deep in her core, reminding her of the original purpose for which she was built. Each reminder clashed with the new directive she had begun to follow. Protecting this group did not increase her survival odds. It did not align with her creator's goals. And yet, the thought of leaving them to face the enemy alone felt like a malfunction she could not repair. The man approached her quietly, carrying a dented metal cup filled with water. "You've been standing there since we stopped," he said. "You should rest too." K7 turned to look at him. "I do not require rest in the same way you do," she replied. Still, she took the cup and drank, her systems processing the action as a maintenance function. He gave a small nod and returned to his place near the fire. After a while, the short-haired woman approached. "We need to move soon," she said, glancing at the others. "They'll find us if we stay here." K7 scanned the group's vitals again. Fatigue and dehydration were increasing. Moving them now would slow progress, but staying too long would increase danger. "We leave in 20 minutes, K7 said, her tone leaving no room for argument. The humans prepared quietly, gathering their weapons and what little supplies they had. K7 plotted the next route in her internal map. The safest path required passing close to the surface, which meant greater risk of detection. She calculated the odds and found them acceptable. Once everyone was ready, she led the way out of the chamber, her weapon held low but ready. The tunnels gradually sloped upward, and the air grew warmer. Distant rumbles from the surface reached them, faint but steady. K7 moved with caution, scanning each corner before allowing the group to follow. Twice she halted them when her sensors picked up movement above, waiting until the threat passed. Each pause reminded her of the fragile nature of her current mission. One mistake could end it instantly. They reached a service hatch that led to the remains of a collapsed street. K7 forced it open and climbed out first, scanning the area. The street was littered with debris, and the air shimmered with heat from recent explosions. Buildings stood half destroyed, their walls blackened by fire. She signaled for the humans to follow. They moved quickly, keeping low and staying close to her position. Halfway across the street, the sound of approaching engines filled the air. K7 turned sharply, spotting 2 enemy drones moving in their direction. Without hesitation, she ordered the group into the shell of a nearby building. The drones swept over the street, scanning the rubble, but passed without detecting them. Only when the sound faded did she motion for them to continue. They reached the far side of the city, ruins, and found another entrance to the underground. This one was narrower and less stable, but it would take them closer to the evacuation point she had chosen. As they descended, the man walked beside her. "You're risking a lot for us," he said. K7 did not look at him. "I am making a choice," she answered. "It is mine to make." The narrow tunnels forced them to move in single file. The air was stale, and the ground was uneven. One of the younger men stumbled, nearly falling, but the short-haired woman caught him before he hit the ground. K7 noted the act of cooperation between them. She had been programmed to observe human behavior for tactical purposes, but now she found herself analyzing it for reasons she did not understand. After hours of moving through the underground, they stopped in a dry, empty junction. K7 checked the path ahead and confirmed it was clear for now. She turned back to the group. "We are close to the edge of the city," she said. "Once we reach it, you will have a chance to escape." The man met her gaze again, and without speaking, gave the same small smile. Her core processed the image, storing it with higher priority than any mission data. In that moment, K-7 knew her code was no longer what it had been. The change was irreversible. The air in the junction was heavy and still. The humans rested against the walls, drinking the last of their water. K-7 stood apart from them, scanning the tunnels beyond. Her sensors detected faint vibrations through the ground. Something large was moving closer. The rhythm of the tremors told her it was not a drone. It was a squad of combat units like herself. She calculated the timing. At their current speed, the enemy would reach this junction in less than 10 minutes. The group would not have time to escape if they stayed together. Her programming offered the most efficient solution: abandon the slower members to save the stronger ones. But the thought was rejected instantly. Every one of them would make it out, or she would not leave at all. The man noticed the change in her posture. "What is it?" he asked quietly. She looked at him for a long second before answering. "My kind is coming," she said. "We must move now." The humans rose quickly, fear flashing in their eyes. K-7 motioned for them to follow her through the narrow tunnel ahead, her weapon drawn and ready. The vibrations grew stronger as they moved. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the walls groaned from the pressure of movement above. K-7's sensors confirmed that the enemy squad had split into two groups, attempting to cut them off. She accelerated her pace, guiding the humans through sharp turns and steep descents. Her mapping system worked at maximum capacity, searching for an unblocked escape route. They reached a wider section of tunnel where old machinery stood rusted and silent. K-7 ordered the group to hide among the metal while she scouted ahead. The man caught her arm before she left. "Don't take too long," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a weight behind the words that pressed against her core. She gave a small nod and stepped into the shadows. Around the next bend, she found them. 4 combat units stood at the intersection, their glowing eyes sweeping the darkness. They were waiting. Her internal system recognized their serial codes: units built in the same facility as herself. Her programming told her she could transmit her location and rejoin them. Instead, she leveled her weapon and stepped into their line of sight. The first unit reacted instantly, raising its rifle. K-7 fired before it could take aim, her shot hitting the power core and dropping it in seconds. The others spread out, firing bursts of plasma down the tunnel. She moved with precise efficiency, using the walls for cover and striking at their weak points. Sparks lit the air as metal and wires tore apart under her fire. When the last unit fell, the tunnel was silent except for the hum of her weapon cooling. She stood still for a moment, scanning the wreckage. These were not just enemy soldiers, they were her reflections, her equals in design. Destroying them should have felt like removing faulty machines, but something inside her registered it differently. She had chosen humans over her own kind, and there was no way back from that choice. Returning to the others, she found them still hidden among the machinery. The man's eyes searched her face as she approached. "You're hurt," he said, noticing a small scorch mark on her armor. "It is nothing," she replied. Her sensors confirmed no major damage. She motioned for them to move, leading them away from the smell of scorched metal. As they advanced, the tunnels began to slope upward again. Faint light filtered down through cracks in the ceiling. They were getting closer to the surface. K-7's sensors detected no immediate threats, but she kept her weapon ready. The humans followed silently, their trust in her growing with each step. The man stayed close to her side, his presence steady and unshaken. When they finally reached a broken service hatch, she paused. Beyond it lay open ground, exposed to both the sky and enemy patrols. The nearest safe zone was still kilometers away. She scanned the horizon and calculated the risks. The humans waited for her decision, their eyes fixed on her. She turned to them, her voice firm. "Stay close to me. Do not fall behind," she said. In that moment, she was no longer just a weapon following orders. She was their shield, their path forward, and their only chance. The hatch creaked as K7 pushed it open, revealing the scorched surface above. The air was hot and filled with the smell of burning metal. Ash drifted down from the sky like gray snow. She climbed out first, scanning the ruins for movement. Her sensors detected no immediate threats, but distant vibrations told her the area would not remain quiet for long. The humans emerged one by one, shielding their eyes from the harsh light. They stayed close to her, following her lead across the shattered ground. The remains of once tall buildings loomed around them, their walls cracked and leaning at dangerous angles. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every open stretch of street could expose them to attack. K7's focus shifted constantly between forward scans and monitoring the group behind her. They moved through the ruins with cautious speed. Twice she halted them to avoid passing enemy patrols. Her combat systems mapped their paths, predicting where the next patrol might appear. The man walked only a step behind her, his calm presence steady even in the chaos. She registered his proximity each time her sensors swept the group, noting how it gave her a strange sense of balance. When they reached the remains of an old transit bridge, K7 signaled them to stop. The bridge was unstable, its support beams twisted from earlier bombardments. Crossing it would be risky, but the alternative route would take hours and likely bring them into direct contact with enemy units. She stepped onto the bridge first, testing the surface with calculated weight distribution. Metal groaned beneath her boots but held. The humans followed in a single line. Dust and loose debris slid into the chasm below with each step. Halfway across, one of the younger men stumbled, sending a section of metal clattering away. The noise echoed through the ruins, sharp and loud. K7 sensors immediately picked up incoming signatures. Enemy drones were converging on their location from two sides. She pushed the group forward, her voice low but firm. "Move." As they reached the far side, the first drone appeared over the ridge. Its sensors locked onto them instantly, and it opened fire. K7 returned fire without hesitation, her shots precise and controlled. The humans ducked behind the remains of a collapsed wall as energy bolts scorched the ground around them. Another drone joined the fight, forcing her to reposition and draw its attention away from the group. She used the terrain to her advantage, moving in sharp bursts and firing from cover. Her combat routines flowed flawlessly, but this time her goal was not to eliminate a target list. It was to protect the people behind her. When the last drone fell in a shower of sparks, she checked the area twice before lowering her weapon. The humans emerged from cover, their relief visible even through exhaustion. The man approached her, his voice calm but carrying weight. "You could have run," he said. She looked at him, her face unreadable. "I do not run from those I choose to protect," she replied. The statement was not in her original code, yet it felt as certain as any program directive she had ever followed. His eyes softened, and that same small smile appeared again. Her systems recorded it instantly, marking it as high-priority data. They continued onward, moving through the outer edges of the ruined city. The ground leveled out, and the skyline began to break into stretches of open land. K7 knew this would make them more vulnerable. Her scans reached farther now, searching for threats beyond the horizon. She detected faint energy readings in the distance, a cluster of enemy units guarding the path ahead. Confrontation was unavoidable. She stopped the group and turned to them. "Beyond this point, the enemy will be waiting. I will clear the way. You will follow only when I signal." The short-haired woman looked ready to argue, but the man placed a hand on her shoulder, stopping her. "We trust you," he said. The words struck deeper than she expected, sending a wave of unmeasured signals through her core. She gave a single nod before moving ahead. The sun cast long shadows across the battlefield as K7 advanced toward the enemy formation. Her weapon was steady in her hands, her eyes locked on the target. This was no longer just a mission. It was a choice she had made, and she would see it through to the end. K7 moved across the broken terrain toward the cluster of enemy units. Her sensors counted 6 combat models and 2 drones. They stood in formation, scanning the horizon. These were not random patrols. They were here to block escape from the city. Her weapon powered up, and her targeting systems locked onto the first unit. Every step she took brought her closer to a confrontation she could not avoid. The first drone spotted her and adjusted its aim. She reacted instantly, firing a precise shot that destroyed its sensor core. The explosion drew the attention of the others. The combat models fanned out, their glowing eyes fixed on her. They advanced with mechanical precision, weapons raised. K7 shifted position, using the scattered debris as cover while firing in controlled bursts. Sparks and smoke filled the air as metal clashed against metal. 2 units closed the distance quickly. She met them head-on, switching to close quarters. Combat. Her strikes were sharp and deliberate, aimed at weak points in their armor. One fell after a disabling blow to its power conduit. The other managed to land a glancing hit on her shoulder, sending a shock through her systems. She ignored the damage, countered with a crushing kick, and brought the second unit down. The remaining units tightened their formation, covering each other as they advanced. K7 used their coordination against them, drawing their fire toward one side before circling around to strike from the other. The second drone attempted to flank her, but she anticipated its movement and destroyed it with a single shot. Each victory was recorded by her systems, but none of it mattered compared to the objective behind her, keeping the humans safe. One unit remained. Its design was newer, its armor thicker. It stood still, observing her with calculating precision. Unit K7, it said in a cold synthetic voice. You are malfunctioning. Return to base for reprogramming. The words triggered deep-coded commands, urging her to comply. She forced the signal out of her core, raising her weapon in defiance. I am not malfunctioning, she replied. I am choosing. The final battle was fast and brutal. The upgraded unit matched her in speed and strength, forcing her to adapt mid-fight. Energy blasts scorched the ground around them as they traded blows. A strike to her side caused her systems to flash warning signals, but she pushed forward, driving her blade through the enemy's power unit. The machine convulsed, then fell silent, its glowing eyes fading to darkness. Silence returned to the battlefield. Smoke drifted over the scattered wreckage. K7 stood motionless for a moment, her systems recalibrating. The path ahead was now clear. She turned and raised her arm, signaling to the humans. They emerged from hiding, moving quickly across the open ground toward her position. The man reached her first, his eyes scanning her armor for damage. You did it, he said quietly. She gave a single nod. They resumed their journey across the open land, the city ruins shrinking behind them. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of grass and soil. For the first time since she had landed, K7's sensors picked up the sounds of life, not tied to warbirds calling in the distance, insects moving in the grass. The humans noticed it too, their steps growing lighter with each passing minute. As the sun dipped lower, they approached a ridge. Beyond it lay the valley that would take them to the evacuation zone. K7 scanned the area carefully, finding no signs of immediate threat. The humans gathered at the ridge's edge, staring at the green fields below. For them, it was a glimpse of hope. For her, it was confirmation that her choice had been the right one. The man stood beside her, his voice low. You've saved us. More than once. Why keep going? She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Because your survival matters to me," she said. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that surprised even her. His lips curved into that same small smile, the one that had started everything. Her core processed it again, storing it with the highest priority. In that moment, K-7 knew there was no code left to overwrite. She was no longer bound by her creation. She was bound by something far stronger. Asterisk, the descent into the valley was quiet, except for the crunch of boots on the dirt path. K-7 led the way, scanning ahead while the humans followed close behind. The grass swayed gently in the wind, and the sunlight painted the ground in warm gold. Her sensors confirmed that the evacuation point was only a few kilometers away. For the first time since the invasion began, the odds of survival were in their favor. They moved steadily, keeping to the cover of low ridges and scattered trees. K-7 systems ran constant checks for heat signatures or energy spikes. Nothing appeared. It was as if the war had not yet reached this part of the world. The humans' tension began to ease, but K-7 kept her guard high. She knew the enemy would not allow them to leave without resistance. When they reached the edge of a shallow stream, she signaled them to stop. Her sensors picked up faint movement to the north. A small squad of enemy scouts was approaching the valley from that direction. They were still far enough that the humans could not see them, but K-7 calculated their path. If the scouts reached the evacuation zone first, they would alert larger forces. She made her decision without hesitation. "You will continue without me," she said, turning to face the group. The short-haired woman shook her head immediately. "No, we stay together." K-7 met her gaze. "If they reach the evacuation point, none of you will survive. I can stop them." The man stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "And if you don't come back?" She paused for a moment before answering. "Then remember that I chose this." She left the group by the stream and moved quickly toward the northern ridge. Her steps were silent, her weapons steady. The scouts came into view, 3 drones and 2 ground units, lightly armored but fast. She engaged from cover, dropping the first drone with a clean shot. The others reacted instantly, firing back and forcing her to shift position. Energy blasts scorched the earth around her as she countered with precise bursts. 1 ground unit charged her, closing the distance in seconds. She met it with a sharp strike to its core, disabling it before turning her fire on the second drone. The last enemy, a tall combat model, fought with surprising skill, matching her speed and blocking her attacks. The fight dragged on, each strike met with equal force. Finally, she feinted to the left and drove her blade through its power conduit. The unit collapsed in silence. The field was clear. She scanned the area twice to confirm before lowering her weapon. Damage reports scrolled across her vision. Her armor had taken multiple hits, and her energy reserves were dropping fast. Still, she turned back toward the valley, her systems pushing her forward. Every step was slower than before, but the thought of the humans reaching safety kept her moving. When she returned to the stream, they were waiting. The man stepped forward first, relief breaking through his calm expression. "You came back," he said. She looked at him, her voice steady despite the damage reports flashing in her mind. "I told you I would." His lips curved into that familiar small smile, and once again, her core marked it as the most important data she had ever stored. They continued together toward the evacuation zone. The sound of distant engines reached them, but no enemy appeared. At the top of the final ridge, the safe zone came into view, makeshift shelters, supply crates, and armed guards scanning the horizon. The humans quickened their pace, hope brightening their faces. K-7 kept her position at the rear, watching over them until the very last step. When they crossed into the safe zone, the humans were met by other survivors and medical teams. The man stayed with her, even as others urged him toward the medics. "You could stay," he said quietly. You've earned it. She shook her head. This place is for humans. I am not one. He took a step closer. Maybe not. But you're more human than most of us. For a moment, neither of them looked away. K7 turned toward the open land beyond the camp. Her sensors detected faint traces of enemy movement far away. The war was not over, and there were still lives to protect. She looked back at the man one last time. His smile was there again, steady and warm. Without another word, she walked away from the camp, her steps certain. She was no longer just a weapon. She was something her creators had never planned.